Hey, Warriors. It is Bharon Hoag here, man. I am so excited for this conversation. And I know I say that all the time. I have the unique advantage with the nature of our podcast being the state of chiropractic. I really have the unique ability to pick specific people to have these conversations with. And they're my most favorite conversations to ever have is really what's going on in the professions. What issues do we really have? What opportunities are presented before us? And man, today's conversation is it's going to hurt a little bit, but it's going to be fun and exciting. And I want to, if you don't know them already, this is Aaron and Patrick from Syntropy. Boys, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. How we doing?
Doing great, brother. It's great to be on here with you.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yep.
So we've got Aaron in Spain and we've got
Yep.
Patrick in North Carolina. Are you home, Patrick, or are you somewhere
I
else around the world?
am, no, I'm at home. It's
All right.
not often that happens, but it's really nice to be at home.
I bet. Well, so I met you guys. This is crazy. We're going on almost 6 or 7 years, I think, at this point, where I was introduced to you. And I don't even remember how I was introduced to you, but as I always do, I have a conversation and then I need to go validate things for myself. And you guys were gracious enough to say, come to Atlanta, come to one of our classes. And you really let me just sit and audit your class in Atlanta. And as I'm sitting there, I even remember getting emotional because watching, I think there were probably 90 people in that room. This is when you guys were still in the gym, like the CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
And there was like probably about 80, 90 people there, students. And I think the gap was students up to, I think that day it was 45 years of practice. That was the delta of the people in the room. And just watching, 50 adjusting tables set up and people going around really practicing, similar to how an athlete would practice their sport and do drills. Watching you really not only drill these people, but you took the time to help them understand physiologically, neurologically, why you were instructing the way that you were instructing. And guys, I know you know this because I told you a million times, but I was so moved by being a part of something like that and watching from the outside and watching the light turn on for even these guys that have been in practice for 20, 30, 40 years as they feel like they have a new lease on life to be able to go back to their practice. So I love who you guys are. So just briefly, for those that may not know you or know of your organization or your company, give us a brief overview of who Syntropy is, kind of why it started, how you guys met. Just give me about a 5-minute kind of summary of kind of how we got to today.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in there, Aaron, and you can add what you feel is relevant. But basically, Aaron and I have been great friends. We met the very first day I arrived in Barcelona, Spain. We both met there. I practiced there for 20 years. Aaron's been there for 20 years. The day I met him, it was like a brother from another mother. And we've just been best friends and connected, similar mentors. Long story short, Aaron was very involved in starting the Barcelona College of Chiropractic. I was later a professor and taught at the Barcelona College of Chiropractic. My wife was in the very first class, and as many students do when they get to the clinical portion and they get the hands-on, they start to feel very frustrated and really like their skills are not up to par. And so my wife, Rochelle, asked us to do some kind of hands-on and teach people. And so we went into that and realized, wow, what a void. We're not very good at teaching what we do. So we started very, very much obsessing about how to teach it, how to break it down. What are the attributes that masterful chiropractors do? And how can we get deep practice on that? And we built this hierarchy over the years of how to teach people to do it. And it's just something we've obsessed on. We continue to obsess on. And it's about taking people, whether they're beginners in school or they've been in practice for 45 years. What are the basics? What do we need to focus on a regular basis? And just take that to the highest level possible. So that's the short story. Aaron, anything to add on that?
The story begins 25 years ago when Patrick and I were in school. We didn't know each other yet. And like Patrick said, we had a common mentor. And he basically lit a fire under us at a seminar. We were both students. And he asked us, do you want to be a master or do you want to be mediocre?
Was this Arno?
And
it was
this was Arno Bernier.
Yeah.
Yep, this is Arno. And he asked us that, do you want to be a master? Do you want to be mediocre? And it just lit a fire underneath both of us. And it was just like, I've been an athlete my whole life growing up, and I didn't know where to put that competitive energy anymore. And I didn't even realize that you could be a masterful chiropractor. I thought it was just kind of like, oh, you can just be a chiropractor and earn a good living and help people. Then when I met him, he showed me there's levels to this thing. And I was so inspired that it has not shut off since then. And we bring that energy to the seminars. Like, no matter where you're at, if you're a student or you're a DCs, we know you have different voids and different issues, but it's like, we want to help them get better no matter where they're at.
Yeah, and it's incredible. And we talked a little bit about this before I hit the record button, but one of the things that I loved about you, we know we have this stool, right? The three-legged stool of art, philosophy, and science.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just take the philosophy and science and put it aside, because that's really where we argue the most, and we just look at the art, I believe the art has a three-legged stool in and of itself, which is the adjustor, the patient getting adjusted, and then the adjustment itself. And all three of those are what I witnessed in your class, unlike anything that I'd ever seen. And I think I've been to like 4 classes of yours now, sitting through and auditing them, because it's just such an amazing energy that you guys produce. And I'm like, wow, no one's ever taught the adjustment from a longevity standpoint for the adjuster, which was just incredible to me. Most of the things you guys teach are teaching the adjuster to be in the right position, not only for line of drive, which is taught oftentimes, but also for wear and tear on the body. Like when you guys do A to P with the blocks and the very little movement that the body has, this is when you're getting chiros that have been in practice for 20, 30 years. Their wrists and their backs are going out because of that repetitive movement if they're seeing any volume whatsoever. So the fact that you guys took the time to figure that out, which I have not heard that from anyone else. Mm-hmm. Another principle, and I'm probably getting this wrong, this is like a little quiz, so let me know if I pass. But okay, you guys also talk about the least amount of force for the greatest amount of impact to the patient. So you're looking at the normal motion of the segments and the line of drive and the vortex in which you're doing all of that, so that it doesn't have to be the wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, the rack 'em and crack 'em, all the other analogies that we've had in this profession. But you're looking at what is the best position for the adjuster to be in to prolong their ability to deliver the adjustment. What is the least amount of force to be able to provide the greatest amount of impact to the patient, which creates the experience for the patient. And then that third leg, which is the adjustment itself, is really you're the first people that I'd ever seen talk about going in the normal motion of the anatomy. And so the adjustment itself can be far more specific, even things placing hands to isolate other segments to make sure that you're only affecting the segment you want, and which is so important. I mean, Heidi just released a new study about a month ago showing when you're adjusting unstable or subluxated segments, there is a massive impact to the prefrontal cortex. But if you're adjusting segments that don't have that instability or aren't subluxated, it doesn't have that prefrontal cortex stimulation, which tells you the body is so connected to know where it needs it and where it doesn't. And you guys have really isolated that ability to go through that motion and detect it. So talk to me about how, because you said that you guys crafted that and over years you've developed how to teach it, but that's different. I don't hear that in Gonstead. I don't hear that in Thompson. I don't hear that in Diversified. I don't hear that in CBP. Where did that come from? How was that just your discovery and breaking it down, or where did you guys come up with that trilogy?
Yeah, I mean, we have very different strengths, and one of my things that I'm pretty obsessive compulsive about is Arno was obviously one of my biggest mentors, and really training and getting that discipline around that. And then another mentor was obviously Carrick. He's such a brilliant mind, and I think he's the one that introduced coupled movement to the chiropractic profession. And I just went down that rabbit hole of really studying the neurology of what's happening when we deliver an adjustment, but also the coupled biomechanics and the innate biomechanics. So I think if BJ or Gonstead or Thompson or any of those guys were alive today, they would be on the avant-garde. They were the ones that were pushing the profession forward. But we didn't really understand the kinematics back then as well as we do now. So really, I think you illustrated it very, very well, but it's about what is the most specific vector that creates that coupled movement to correct the subluxation. And then it's like, how much can we line up with that? So there's no inefficiency, no wasted energy that's being sent throughout their spine or sent back into the chiropractor's body. So not only is it efficient, you can use less force and get more result, but it doesn't beat your body up. And the side effect is actually it's a more beautiful adjustment as well, because it's just so efficient and clean.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree. And you had mentioned that you guys have different skill sets, and you definitely do, because Aaron, brother, I'm going to tell you right now, getting a hug from you is one of the most amazing experiences. And I'm being dead serious. I'm not just having a love fest here. I'm telling you this. Getting a hug from, I'm going to get emotional just talking about this. Getting a hug from you is one of the most wholesome, real things that I've experienced in a very long time. Your energy and your connection that you have, just the second that one of the phrases that you guys, oh, I cannot believe I'm tearing up. One of the things that you guys really talk about is dropping in, which is being present with the patient at the time of the adjustment, because that energy transfer is an element of the adjustment that has been lost in today's education system. There is no talking about what, my daughter's an empath, and you guys have trained her, and, it took her a long time to not absorb. I mean, you just talked about that, Patrick, that, what are you getting back from the adjustment into the adjuster? But Aaron, you bring such an element of that energy in that part. Talk to me about where that is. Have you always had that? Is that just who you are as a human, or is that something that you've just intentionally developed over time?
I've definitely not always had that. I think that what ties the entire adjustment, everything that you were talking about and Patrick was talking about, what ties the whole thing together is that it's the connection, and it's the energy, and it's the drop in. And when we're dropped in, we can actually connect with people. And when we're dropped in, all dropped in means, guys, watching this, is that you're really in the present moment, that you're the primary oscillator, that your energy is strong and coherent. And when it's strong and coherent, others can entrain to you and to your energy. But if you're not coherent and you're disconnected, or you're distracted, or you're adjusting somebody and you're thinking about dinner, or you're talking to them about their golf game, you're not fully connected, then someone else in your practice is going to be that primary energy, and we entrain to them. So it's really something that I didn't know about this when I was growing up. I had no idea. And it's come through mentors. Like Patrick and I had some of the same mentors, and we just started looking at what are these people doing? Like, what are these masterful adjusters doing? And trying to break it down, like trying to emulate them, and then like break down what are these first principles that they do, and we realized that was one of the things. It's like they're incredibly present with people. And it just starts this process. For me, it was like, well, how deep can you go? Like, how connected can you go? And how present can you be? And I think it's infinite,
Yeah. Well, again, you guys have your skill sets, but bro, Aaron, you have that part down. And I'm not saying you don't have it, Patrick. I'm just saying Aaron has it in spades. And it is a beautiful thing. So, all right. Well, thank you for giving a little bit for our viewers to understand a little bit more of who you are and what we're doing. Now we're going to go to the question, the thing, and I'm just going to set the stage, and then I'm going to let you guys take it where you want to take it after that. I want to be very clear. I'm not blaming anyone whatsoever. I'm not blaming the schools. I'm not blaming CCE. I'm not blaming the profession. I'm not blaming techniques. Nobody's to blame. It is what it is, right? We are where we are because of the steps that have happened. God's in control. His divine will is going to play out whether we're involved in it or not. So please know that when I say this. Mm-hmm. But one of the problems we have in chiropractic is we are unwilling to talk about the truth of where we're at. We always have to somehow compensate. We always have to somehow justify and kick it under the rug so that we don't have to deal with it. And we just keep going on hoping that someday it'll improve. I don't believe that works. It doesn't work in our lives. It doesn't work in our relationships. You eventually have to face it. You have to deal with it, and you learn from it and you move on. There's a lot of issues in our profession, but one of them is most definitely the fact that the art of adjusting is no longer a primary focus with students in school. Whether it's the student's perspective, whether it's the system in itself and the way that the schools are created, whether it's the focal point of national boards versus CCE, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to argue it's happening around the world, so it's not CCE's fault, and it's not an individual school's fault. It is happening around the world. And so one of the reasons I fell in love with you guys, and we'll never forget our Mexican meal, will we, boys?
No, we will not.
No way.
Right. So, we sat down at that Mexican restaurant, and I was venting to you my frustration having a child that was at Sherman, and which was, in my opinion, one of the stronger philosophical schools that really teaches and talks about the adjustment. But yet she was coming out petrified of the adjustment. And with all due respect, she's my kid. Everyone knows my personality. She grew up with a strong basis and understanding for chiropractic. She had the best step forward to leave that school, one arrogant little woman about adjusting. And she came out very fearful and not trusting and believing in the adjustment. And I was infuriated, absolutely infuriated. How is this possible? How can my kid come out with that? And it took me about a month and a half to unbrainwash her, to get her to the point where she would allow herself, and a few of your guys' trainings we sent her to. And now she's turned into this unbelievable adjusting machine, and she's so incredible. This is an issue because not everyone's going to have the surroundings or the environment to force them to break that and to become what they should be. And now what we have is an army of chiropractors out there that don't really understand the adjustment, aren't really delivering it in the most effective way, And so now it's creating this different understanding of the population of what chiropractic is. So it's a very big problem for me, and something that I'm concerned about. Talk to me about your guys' honestly. You live in this space. I dabble in it because of the work that I do, but am I off? Do you agree? Like, can we have an honest conversation about specifically in our profession, are we really preparing the future generations to be the best chiropractors that they can be?
No. And we're handicapping them. It's not even preparing them, we're handicapping them. And okay, if we're not going to be politically correct, and we'll get into it.
Let's go.
It's not to bash any particular schools. It's just if you have a business, you have a vision. You have a mission that you're following, and your clarity is going to guide where you go. And we've been involved in starting schools, and we know what's involved there and how it happens. And you start off with the principle that you want to create the best chiropractors in the world. And very quickly, you realize that your masters are not creating the best chiropractors. It becomes number one, I need enrollment, because you need money to come in to keep a school going. Okay. And you need student loans, and you need all that stuff that comes behind it. And in order to keep students coming in, you have to get them to pass boards or get accreditation. If they don't have an accredited degree, then your school it doesn't even matter.
Right.
So very, very quickly, you realize that the masters are enrollment and accreditation, and it has nothing to do with producing great chiropractors. And that's not to say that there aren't schools out there that are working towards that, but it's not the stated objective of the school. It's not. So if you have a business that's focused on one outcome, then you're going to get that outcome. But if it's not the focus and the outcome, there's no money that comes from producing great chiropractors.
Yeah, that's very well said, Aaron.
If you look at, I remember Arno used to talk about this in his seminars and recent, like the last probably 10 years or so. He just talk about how just the general state of things, you look at all sports, you look at everything that's happened like the last 100 years, people are jumping higher, sprinting faster, basketball players are amazing. People are bigger, stronger, faster. Every single sport is getting better and better and better. MMA fighters are going in and spending a lifetime training to beat the crap out of people, and like these super, super high level. And then you look at chiropractic, and people like the level is dropping.
So true.
Students are scared that chiropractors are not delivering good adjustments, and they're hurting themselves. And it's just like this thing, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And it's funny because even this is where I don't think we have a reverence for the adjustment. And this is easy for me to say because I'm not a chiropractor, right? So I'm on the outside, but I'm the damn closest thing to a chiropractor not being one. I've sat through the adjusting seminars. I've gone to the philosophy classes. I've put in the work. Right. And so I just don't think we have a reverence for the adjustment and how powerful the adjustment is. And my point in that statement is we get results even when we don't do it well. Like it's kind of like a weight loss guy that's just got a secret thing and they're not teaching you anything, but you're still losing weight. So they can, maybe not as much as you could be losing, and you're not losing it the right way. Ozempic, right? Like, okay, it makes you feel good in the moment, but what it's doing internally. So we have a whole litany of chiropractors that are like, yeah, but my business is good. My patients keep coming back. They're happy. Why would, there isn't that goal, right? At least with a sport, there's constant competition and comparison, and you're chasing the national championship or the weight belt in that category, right? In chiropractic, there's not that. It's at the end of the day, it's, am I happy? Am I providing for my family? And are my patients happy? And if they are, then I'm just not going to push myself to that extra edge. It's just those individuals that have it built in them that they've always got to be the best are the ones that keep churning. So I agree with you. You're right. We don't continue to hone that craft. We get to a level where it's satisfactory, and then we live in that satisfactory level until there's something that shakes that up. And this is where it frustrates me as someone that's constantly fighting for this profession, constantly taking on the issues. And one of the arguments against chiropractic is just exactly what we're talking about. And the reason they call it a sham is a lot of people can't explain what they do. As a matter of fact, my own search, when I was trying to figure out what chiropractic was, took me all the way to Heidi Havoc and Richard Barwell and all these guys. And my very first was Dan Murphy, because I couldn't find a chiropractor that could actually explain to me why the adjustment worked. They just said it does, right? And so we just don't, that's why we're such an easy target for the medical communities or PTs or anyone else, because they can at least explain what they're touching, why they're touching it, and why they think it's getting a result, even though they still are missing a huge portion of what the actual chiropractic adjustment is. So in this thing, to throw another kind of like issue on top of this, I sit in an organization called the Chiropractic Summit. And the Chiropractic Summit is essentially all of the major organizations in the United States. There's schools, there's vendors, there's FCLB, Federation of Chiropractic Licensing Boards, NBCE, National Boards for Chiropractic, CCE, the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, all of us, all of our major organizations, we sit together 3 times a year for no other purpose than just to share what each one's doing and what issues, and see if there's opportunities for collaboration. It's a beautiful thing. It's necessary. Doesn't mean we all agree. Doesn't mean that there isn't some contention in there for sure, but it's at least good to know. And we're at least sitting around a table, and there has been opportunities. One of those opportunities that has recently happened was CCE bringing it to the attention of everybody that we have about 15 states in the United States that in the actual law in that state demand specific things like 4,600 of in-butt hours. You have to have this, like all these criteria that are eliminating our ability to really transition education into a more learning like other schools are doing, where is it really necessary? Does having 4,900 hours of classroom really make a better chiropractor? You and I both know that the answer is no, that does not. And so we're really going to a competency base, which I'm very excited about. Even NBCE is changing national boards to go to a competency base rather than just a memorization, which is what, at least the first 3 parts of the parts are just, if you can cram and memorize, you can pass them, but it doesn't mean you have a stinking ability to treat a patient. So what we're finding, and this is where I'm leading to, because I want to talk about what you guys are really developing, which I'm so excited about. There's a possibility now for online learning, even in the core curriculum of education. We learned that in COVID because everybody had to go through that when they couldn't go to their campuses. But now we're starting to see that there's a concerted effort within all of the major organizations in the profession to be able to give the schools the freedom to be able to adapt and modernize technology to do that. And the first thought that goes through people's head, well, that doesn't work for chiropractic because we've got to have hands-on in order to do the adjusting. I was one of those. If you guys remember when you pitched to me your online thing, I even was a naysayer saying, guys, there's no way that you're going to be able to create that energy. You're going to be able to create that experience or the learning comprehension online. But you guys are proving me wrong. You're telling me, I've talked to some students that are doing your online stuff, and they're telling me, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm really competent. So talk to me about that, because as we have a problem, and the problem is that we have not only students in schools, but we have existing chiropractors that don't have that drive to be better at what they do. Not all of them are going to fly to a seminar and pay thousands of dollars because they value this enough to take the time and money to do it. Technology does leverage an opportunity to reduce that threshold financially, but still potentially deliver a high level value. Talk to me about what you guys have learned with your online stuff.
I'll start with it. I wondered as well if it was going to be effective. This all started because we were going to go teach in Australia in 2020, and then everything happened with COVID. They shut down everyone. There was no travel, couldn't get in the country, and we had like 80 or 90 people signed up for a seminar in Perth, and we decided Roberto Monaco was going to come over to Spain to teach a live seminar, and he couldn't come as well. And he goes, I'm doing it virtually. Guys, we're going to do a virtual seminar. And so we did his virtual communication seminar, and Patrick and I were sitting there doing the seminar thinking about, what do we do with Australia? Are we going to have to cancel the event? And like a month before, 6 weeks before, we had this event with Roberto Monaco, and we realized, like, I think we can do this. I think we can do this virtually. And we just made a decision to do it. And it was so hard. That was so hard, that first seminar. We had people in Perth. We had people in Melbourne, like a few different places in Victoria. We had Hong Kong. There were like 5 people, 5 different groups in this Zoom call. And we're like, okay, let's give it a shot. And that's
on the other side of the world in the middle of the night when we weren't allowed to even be out on the street in COVID. It was insane. Yeah.
So that's where it all started, and we poured ourselves into it, and then we realized, like, after that seminar, and it was super successful, and people were like, the feedback was amazing, and we thought, like, okay, we can do this, and we continued to develop it, and then 4 years later, we have this online academy. And so, Patrick, if you want to chat about the online academy.
Yeah, basically what we did is And we just wanted to break down and create the resource that we didn't have. And so we just, everything that we teach from A to Z, just like all of the mechanics, the neurology, the dropping in, the adjusting, every single bit of it, we filmed in like little 15-minute increments. And then we have an online coaching group. So we do give people feedback. But speaking to your point about being able to do it online, you do have to have live physical bodies. You need to actually, it is a hands-on skill. There's no replacement. I see these force plates that people work with, and I think it's just such a bad idea. It is so not like a human being. And you need that actual connection and feeling, like, what are different body types? What is their elasticity? What's their adiposity? Like, how do you sink in? There's no replacement for that. However, we have created such a curriculum that we can guide people as to what are the relevant things that you need to practice on a repetitive basis. And then when we get together, it goes so much deeper and people advance so much faster. And not only their skill level, but their results and just the ease on their body. So it does not replace hands-on learning, but a lot of the time, butts on seats can be replaced by getting the information in the head first.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing, because your classes are just blowing up, you keep having to go to bigger and bigger hotels.
Yeah.
Like, that's our next conversation, gentlemen, at our next Mexican meal. But the online academy hasn't reduced the live. It's actually increased it, because as they're in the academy and they're learning all that, they're like, I want to get in a room and I want them to watch. And the feedback, and this is one of the things that one of your students had told me that they love the most, is they film themselves adjusting now, send it into you guys, and you guys are giving feedback on it. And I'm like, what a freaking phenomenal idea. Like, it never even occurred to me that you can still give that feedback by having them record it and send it into you guys, and you guys are giving feedback, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It takes a very special brain to be able to do that. And Patrick, that we talk about our skill sets and it's like the engineer's brain, reverse engineering, and seeing, well, what is it? And then going through the hierarchy that we teach from and going, oh, it's this person's missing this thing. And to be able to then show them, it's a really, really cool skill. Like, I'm getting much better at it, but this is like mastery level. And yeah, I don't think people can do it. I don't think there's really anyone else in the profession that does it like Patrick does. It's pretty special.
Yeah. And I think the part of the reason, obviously God's got a plan and we're playing our role in it. So I'm not going to take anything out of that. You guys were built for what's going on right now, just as I was built for what I'm doing right now.
Great.
But what I want people to hear in this, because I don't want you to use that as a cop-out and be like, oh, that's their calling, mine's not that. No. Your calling was to take this seriously, and then you've just conditioned yourself to continually dig, get better, hone your craft. If you're watching this thing, I don't care where you're at in the world. And that's why I was so excited, because these guys are pretty much anywhere I'm at, they're holding events. And now with this online, it doesn't matter where you're at. Part of the reason that chiropractic is a target, part of the reason I have to fight the fights like I do with pediatric chiropractic in Australia, fighting for x-ray rights in Canada, fighting for the ability to control regulatory bodies from going after chiropractors, because you make it so damn easy to come after you. Like, we have to step it up. Your judge for success is not how successful your clinic is. There are a lot of con artists that make a lot of money, but don't help hardly anybody in the process. But everyone thinks it's great. We have to love this. BJ said, protect the sacred trust, and everyone abuses that line. It's very similar to abusing scripture to fit whatever narrative you want it to do. Yeah. When he said protect the sacred trust, it didn't mean fight for chiropractic. It means be the best. Keep digging. If you look at BJ was always challenging his truths constantly. This is why it cracks me up with the whole straights and mixers thing. BJ was a mixer. Like, the dude had more technology and electrical current and stuff that he used to hone his craft than he ever did with his hands. I mean, he just was constantly reevaluating and digging. We have to do that as a profession. It makes my job easier to defend and take threats and turn them into opportunities if I have an army of people behind me that are taking this seriously and doing it. And if we don't fix this problem, everyone that's the naysayers, they're going to be partially right. In 20 years, we're going to have a profession where there's only a handful of people. And you think it's hard now to know where to refer a friend of yours in another town? Because we all do it, right? We call and say, hey, who's a good chiropractor in your town? Looking for a chiropractor, right? We're doing it now. You think it's horrible now? Wait 20 years if we don't take this seriously.
Yeah.
Rather than judging your colleague, how about inviting them to a class? How about you guys going in together on an academy membership where you guys can work together, record each other, send the videos in. You guys get together for other stupid things that talk about reimbursement and workers' comp and personal injury. How about you get together to have an adjusting thing? And now there's a resource through a company like this. This is a big issue that our profession needs to take seriously. So gentlemen, last thoughts as we kind of wrap this thing up. You've got these people's attention at this point. What do you want them to know?
Well, I just want to follow up on that thought there really quickly. And that is basically the fact that we're all listening to this. We're all chiropractors. We're in a profession that exists against the greatest adversity of any profession has ever experienced. I don't know of any other one that's had the same attack on us from multiple fronts. And it's because, one, it's a principle that gives power back to people. And number two, the reason that we've survived is not because of our randomized clinical control trials or our student loans or any of this stuff. We survived because we delivered results, and people were dedicated to a principle, and they delivered a masterful adjustment that created absolute before and after changes in their physiology, and people healed from all sorts of things. And so that was the driving principle in the beginning. And I think that has been lost. And that's why it's a shame that we even have to exist. But that void is what Aaron and I are super committed to, is bringing back that mastery and delivering the undeniable experience, because that's not only what's going to grow your practice and give you a better life, but it's what's going to create the results. It's going to create the shift in the profession where people went to the jails. They went to the legislature and said, we want our doctor back. We want a law that protects them because my kid didn't die from the Spanish flu, or, you know, all these crazy results that we're getting at BJ Palmer Clinic and Gonstead and all these things. Bring that back. That's what moves the needle forward. You know, like, yes, we need all the legislature. We need all the things that are happening. But at the end of the day, you got to deliver the goods.
All right.
So, yeah,
go ahead, Aaron.
I don't know.
We all want to make a great living. We all want to do well for ourselves and for our families. But if we don't change something, we are at a serious risk of losing the profession. Everyone can talk about how great it is, like, oh, it's awesome. You know, I got reimbursed for doing all these different therapies and all these different things, and be totally mediocre at adjusting. If we do that, that might be fine for us. We're going to be in practice for the next 20, 30 years. That's not going to be okay for the future generations. Chiropractic will be gone. It will be absorbed unless we all step up and start doing something different. And we can. And every single person, whoever's listening to this, male, female, big, small, young, old, it does not matter. Like, you can master it. It's just about mastering the fundamentals. And if we do that and we all step up, things will change.
Incredible, gentlemen. Listen, real quick, how do they find you?
SyntropyChirotraining.com. We're all over social media, but our website is SyntropyChirotraining.com.
And you guys can see it right under their names on the screen, so you can see there. But Syntropy, for those of you listening, is SYNTROPY Chiropractic Training. All right, boys, listen, I cannot tell you how much I love and respect you. It is an honor to serve alongside of you in this time in history, in this profession. It's going to be exciting in another 30 years when we sit back and we're reminiscing around the fire, you know, all the things that we've gotten to do together and the world that we had a hand in helping to shape. And so please know that you're in my prayers constantly. I love when I find opportunities to connect with you guys. And thank you. Thank you for taking this seriously. Thank you for stepping up and being the masters that you are at what you do. And I can't wait to continue to support, encourage, and work alongside you.
Thank you,
Aaron, thank you, brother. We really, really appreciate what you're doing, and just all the respect, my man.
All right, guys, God bless. To those of you listening, we'll be back at you next week with another podcast. Do not turn away. And remember, our goal is to make chiropractic the #1 healthcare choice in the world, and you are a huge part of it. All right, God bless, everybody.